Zuri had finally made it. For years, her parents had called her useless, the one who would never amount to anything. But now, her business in Nairobi was doing better than she ever dreamed. She worked day and night, and when success finally came, the first thing she wanted to do was make peace with her parents. She thought maybe, just maybe, a grand gesture could heal the old wounds. So she bought them a brand new car worth $35,000, sleek, shiny, and perfect. She imagined their smiles, their pride, maybe even a hug that said, "We were wrong about you." When she drove the car all the way to Kisumu and handed them the keys, her heart was full of hope. Her father walked around the car, eyes scanning every inch of it, not in awe but in calculation, like he was figuring out what it was worth. Her mother pulled her close, smiling brightly for the camera, insisting on taking pictures to post later. But Zuri could feel something off. The warmth wasn't real. Beneath the smiles, the air felt cold. She tried to ignore the feeling. She told herself it was just her imagination, that they were surprised, that love took time to thaw. She wanted this moment to mean something, a fresh start after years of hurt. But deep down, a small voice whispered that maybe this gift wouldn't fix anything. Maybe it would only show her how broken things really were. 2 weeks later, Zuri was in her apartment packing a gift for her sister Nia's graduation. She was actually excited. Things with her parents had been a bit quiet since she gave them the car, but she thought maybe they were finally proud of her. She had even booked her flight to Kisumu and picked out a dress for the ceremony. As she folded a card into Nia's gift box, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her mother. Smiling, Zuri reached for the phone, expecting a sweet reminder or maybe a "can't wait to see you." But as soon as she opened the text, her heart stopped. "We sold the car for Nia's party. She deserves a proper celebration." At first, she thought it was a joke. She blinked, reread the message, and waited for the punchline. But before she could even process it, another message popped up. "Buy us another one or don't bother showing up." Zuri froze. Her fingers went cold. The same car she had worked so hard to buy, the one she thought would heal everything, was gone. Just like that. Sold off for a party. She stared at the screen for a long time, her chest tight, her mind racing. Her parents hadn't even asked her. They hadn't called to explain. It was just a transaction to them. Something to sell and celebrate someone else with. She sat down slowly on her couch, phone still in her hand, the messages glowing like tiny knives on the screen. For years, she had fought to earn their love, to prove she was more than the useless child they'd once called her. Every late night, every risk she took with her business, every tear, it had all been for this moment, to finally make them proud. And yet, here she was, watching all that effort vanish with a 2-sentence text. The pain came in waves. Anger. Shock. Then disbelief. How could her mother write something so cold? How could her father agree to it? How could they look at that car, her gift of love, and see only money for a party? A party for Nia, the golden child. The one who always got the best, while Zuri got the leftovers. Zuri thought about calling them, demanding an explanation, but her throat tightened. What would she even say? They wouldn't understand. They never did. They would probably tell her she was being dramatic or ungrateful. She tossed her phone aside and stared out the window, the city lights blurring through her tears. That car had been more than metal and wheels. It was her way of saying, "I forgive you." It was her peace offering, her symbol of hope. And now, it was gone, traded for balloons, music, and Nia's perfect smile. In that quiet apartment, something in Zuri broke. But in that same silence, something else began to rise, not anger, not revenge, but clarity. For the first time, she saw the truth for what it was: no gift could fix what was already dead. Zuri sat alone in her apartment that night, the city lights flickering through the curtains like tiny reminders of everything she had built on her own. The apartment felt colder than usual. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore, it was heavy, pressing down on her chest. She picked up her phone again, rereading her mother's messages, hoping she had misunderstood them. But no matter how many times she read them, the words stayed the same. They had sold her gift. The car she'd given with love, the one that meant forgiveness and connection, was gone. She placed the phone on the table and covered her face with her hands. Suddenly, the memories she had tried to bury for years began to surface, one after another, like waves crashing inside her mind. She remembered being 12 and hearing her father say, "Zuri is just a disappointment. Nia is the one who'll make us proud." She remembered sitting at the dining table doing her homework while her mother bragged about Nia's grades and ignored her completely. She remembered begging to join a school trip, only to be told there wasn't enough money, and then watching Nia get a brand new phone a week later. Back then, Zuri told herself it didn't matter. She learned to smile through the hurt, to work harder, to prove them wrong someday. And she did. Every late night, every client she convinced, every risk she took to grow her business, all of it had been fueled by one quiet hope, that one day her parents would finally look at her with pride. She never wanted revenge, she just wanted love. But now, sitting there in the dim light, she realized this betrayal was different. It wasn't a careless insult or a forgotten birthday. It was planned. Calculated. They didn't sell the car because they needed the money. They sold it to celebrate Nia, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. And in doing so, they had sold the one thing Zuri had left to give them, her trust. Tears rolled down her face, but she didn't sob. It was a quiet kind of crying, the kind that comes from exhaustion, not weakness. She looked around her apartment, the furniture she had bought herself, the certificates framed on the wall, the little successes no one back home had ever cared to see. For years, she thought if she achieved enough, she could buy her way into her family's love. But love wasn't something you could purchase or earn. And now, she finally saw that. She stood up and walked to the window, watching the traffic below. The city kept moving, unaware of her pain, but something inside her shifted. The car had been her peace offering, her way of saying, "I still care, even after everything." But they had sold it for a night of laughter and music. Maybe that was all she needed to understand. For the first time in her life, Zuri stopped blaming herself. She realized she had never been the disappointment, she had only been trying to love people who didn't know how to love her back. 3 days passed, and Zuri still hadn't called her parents back. She had replayed everything in her head so many times that it almost felt like a bad dream she couldn't wake up from. She went to work, smiled at her employees, and answered calls like nothing was wrong, but inside, she was numb. Her phone stayed silent most of the time, until one afternoon it started ringing. She looked at the screen and froze. "Nia." For a moment, Zuri thought about ignoring it. But curiosity won, and she answered. "Hey, sis." Nia's voice was overly sweet, dripping with fake warmth. "I was just checking if you're coming on Saturday. It's going to be such a beautiful party. Everyone will be there. Oh, and bring that designer bag you posted on Instagram. I want to borrow it for my photos." Zuri didn't say a word. She just listened. The sound of Nia's laughter on the other end made her stomach tighten. This was the same sister who had watched her struggle for years, who had stayed silent when their parents mocked her, who was now happily throwing a party paid for by Zuri's stolen gift. When Nia realized Zuri wasn't responding, she awkwardly said, "Anyway, don't be late," and hung up. Zuri sat there, phone still in her hand, her heart beating faster than usual. A strange calm settled over her. It wasn't anger anymore, it was something sharper, clearer. She finally understood that her family didn't just take her for granted, they saw her as a resource, not a person. The car was proof. They had taken what was hers, sold it, and expected her to show up smiling, pretending everything was fine. She stood up and looked at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were tired, but there was something new behind them, resolve. For years, she had avoided confrontation. She thought staying quiet was the mature thing to do. But silence had only taught them to keep walking over her. Not this time. If they wanted her at that party, she would go, but on her terms. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept picturing the celebration, the lights, the laughter, the same people who had always looked down on her now cheering for Nia. The idea twisted inside her like a spark waiting to ignite. They wanted a grand show. She would give them one. But this time, it wouldn't end the way they expected. By morning, Zuri had a plan. It wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. She wanted them to see her, really see her, for the first time. She wanted to show them that the girl they once called useless had become the woman they could no longer control. She opened her wardrobe, picked out a sleek black dress, and laid it on the bed. Saturday was coming. And when she walked into that party, she wouldn't just be another guest. She would be the storm they never saw coming. The night of the party finally came. Zuri stood in front of her mirror for a long time before leaving. She wore a sleek black dress that hugged her figure perfectly, simple but powerful. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and her makeup was calm and elegant. In her hand, she held a small silver envelope. It looked harmless, but inside it was the truth, and tonight, that truth would finally be revealed. When she reached her parents' home in Kisumu, the sight took her breath away for a second. The house was glowing with fairy lights, music filling the air, and laughter spilling out from every corner. Cars lined the driveway, people in fancy clothes moved around with glasses of champagne, and a huge banner stretched across the yard, "Congratulations, Nia." Zuri stepped out of her car, heels clicking softly against the driveway. Heads began to turn. Whispers followed. No one had expected her to come, especially after what had happened. Some people smiled nervously, others just stared. Nia was at the center of it all, surrounded by friends, glowing in her silver gown, the perfect image of the golden child. When her parents saw Zuri, they hurried over, pretending to be happy. Her mother's smile was wide but stiff. "Oh, Zuri. You came after all," she said, her voice too bright to be real. Her father leaned in close, still smiling for the guests. Through his teeth, he whispered, "Glad you made it. Try not to make a scene." Zuri met his eyes and smiled calmly. "I wouldn't dream of it," she said softly. She could feel the tension in the air. Her parents guided her toward a table as if she were a delicate problem they needed to hide. Every move they made was about keeping up appearances. But Zuri wasn't nervous anymore. The fear, the pain, the need to please, all of it had burned away. Tonight wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. As she moved through the crowd, people greeted her politely, their voices full of fake sweetness. Some complimented her dress, others whispered about her success in Nairobi. Nia approached, arms open wide, pretending to be warm. "Zuri. You look amazing," she said, giving her a quick hug that felt more like a performance than affection. Zuri smiled and handed her the gift she brought, a small box wrapped neatly, but Nia didn't notice the envelope in Zuri's other hand. The night grew louder, the music faster. Speeches were made, toasts were raised, and cameras flashed. Zuri sat quietly, watching, waiting. Every laugh, every compliment, every lie from her parents only made her surer of what she was about to do. Finally, when the room was full of clinking glasses and Nia's laughter echoed across the hall, Zuri stood up. The silver envelope shimmered under the lights as she held it gently by her side. Her heart was steady, her face calm. Everyone turned to look at her, the sister no one expected to show up, standing tall in the middle of the celebration. Zuri smiled softly. The time for pretending was over. When the music slowed and the laughter faded, the host called for a toast. Everyone raised their glasses toward Nia, who stood beaming in the center of the room, her diamond earrings catching the light. Zuri rose quietly from her seat, her black dress gliding as she moved. The silver envelope rested in her hand, and the soft clink of her glass caught everyone's attention. The chatter died down, and all eyes turned toward her. Her parents stiffened instantly, their smiles freezing. Nia looked surprised, maybe even nervous. Zuri smiled gently. "To my sister," she began, her voice calm and clear. "To Nia, who always knew what she wanted and made sure she got it. And to the parents who taught us that loyalty matters more than money." A few people chuckled, raising their glasses in agreement. Her mother's tight smile returned, her father nodded too quickly. For a moment, it felt like a normal toast. But then Zuri's tone shifted, soft, but cutting through the air like a blade. "You see," she continued, eyes never leaving her parents, "this whole party was funded by a car that wasn't theirs to sell. A car that was meant as a gift of love. A gift from me." The room went silent. The only sound was the faint hum of music in the background. Her mother's smile disappeared. Her father's face drained of color. Zuri went on, her voice steady but firm. "I thought that car would bring us closer. I thought it would heal old wounds. But instead, it was sold behind my back to pay for tonight, for this celebration." She paused, scanning the crowd, her eyes glinting under the light. "But that's okay," she added, a slow smile forming. "Because the buyer?" She tilted her head slightly. "The buyer works for me." Gasps rippled across the room. The crowd turned, whispering, some covering their mouths. At that exact moment, the sound of an engine outside cut through the silence. Heads turned toward the large glass windows. A sleek black SUV rolled into the driveway, its headlights flashing once before turning off. People began to murmur louder now. Nia's smile vanished. Her father looked as though he'd seen a ghost. The driver stepped out of the car, dressed in a sharp black suit, and walked straight toward Zuri, holding up the keys. The same car her parents had sold. Zuri took the keys slowly, her expression calm, almost peaceful. She turned back to the guests, raising her glass once more. "So here's to family," she said softly, "and to lessons that sometimes cost a little more than we expected." Her mother tried to speak, but no words came. Her father's hands trembled as the whispers grew louder, spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Phones were already being lifted, cameras flashing, eyes wide with disbelief. Zuri smiled one last time, her voice gentle but final. "Some things can be bought. But love and loyalty." She paused. "Those were never for sale." The room fell completely silent as Zuri's last words hung in the air. No one moved, no one spoke. Then, from outside, the sound of an engine broke the silence, deep, smooth, unmistakable. Every head turned toward the large glass doors that opened to the driveway. Through the glow of the fairy lights, a sleek black SUV rolled up slowly, gleaming under the lights like something out of a dream. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the car stopped right in front of the house. The same car her parents had sold. The driver stepped out, tall, composed, dressed in a crisp black suit, and walked straight toward Zuri. Without saying a word, he handed her the keys. The silver keychain caught the light as Zuri turned it in her hand. The moment stretched. Everyone was watching. Her parents' faces went pale. Nia's eyes widened as if she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Zuri smiled softly, her calmness sharper than any anger. She looked at her mother first, then at her father. "You didn't check the paperwork, did you?" she said quietly, her voice clear enough for everyone to hear. "That car was registered under my company. You sold something that wasn't even yours." The room erupted with whispers. Some guests covered their mouths. Others looked between Zuri and her parents, unsure what to do. Her father's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her mother's fake smile was gone completely. Nia stood frozen in her perfect gown, her face red with embarrassment as every camera in the room turned toward her family. Zuri continued, her tone calm but full of meaning. You thought you were teaching me a lesson, she said. But I think it's time you learned one instead. She stepped closer to her parents, holding the keys in her hand, her expression unreadable. You always told me I was the disappointment. The failure. The one who'd never make it. But now, everything you thought you owned, everything you used to shame me, is mine. Gasps filled the air again. Someone at the back whispered, "Is this real?" Phones were already recording, flashes lighting up the tense scene. Her father tried to speak again, stammering, "Zuri, we can explain," but Zuri shook her head slowly. "There's nothing left to explain," she said, her voice steady. "I gave you something from my heart. You sold it for a night of attention. And now everyone can see who you really are." Her words hit like a quiet storm. Nia's friends looked away, embarrassed. Her mother turned her face, tears threatening to fall but pride holding them back. Her father just stood there, lost for words. Zuri placed the keys in her purse and took a deep breath. She wasn't angry anymore, she was done. The crowd had seen the truth for themselves. For the first time in her life, she didn't have to prove anything. She had walked into their world on her own terms, and she was walking out free. The room was still buzzing when Zuri reached into her purse and pulled out the small silver envelope. Her parents stared at it, confused, but she didn't say a word. She stepped closer, her heels clicking softly against the floor, and handed it to her father. He opened it with shaking hands, his eyes widening as he read the first line. It was a legal notice, one that ended their access to every account, property, and investment that Zuri had ever helped them with. "You sold love for luxury," she said quietly, her voice steady and clear. "Now you can enjoy it without me." Her mother gasped, trying to reach for her, but Zuri stepped back. There was no anger in her eyes anymore, only peace, the kind that comes when you finally stop fighting for people who never fought for you. Around them, phones were already lifted, recording every word, every look. Guests whispered, some in shock, some in admiration. Zuri turned toward the door and walked out calmly, the keys to the car swinging gently in her hand. Behind her, the once lively music had faded into silence. Nia stood frozen. Her parents didn't move. The fairy lights outside flickered softly as Zuri got into the SUV and drove away without looking back. By morning, the video was everywhere. "The daughter who turned betrayal into power," the headlines read. Thousands of people shared her speech, calling her brave, calling her free. And for the first time in her life, Zuri didn't feel like the forgotten child or the disappointment. She felt light, like she had finally let go of years of pain. She hadn't just walked away from her family, she had walked into her freedom.